Okay, we have a presentation, an ICRC presentation as our next session. And the presentation will be discussing cryptographic enforced humanitarian token system. So I'm just going to say that again for you. Cryptographic enforced humanitarian token system. And it'll be presented by both Vincent Cassard and Kurt Nielsen. Welcome.
I think we will just be standing. So welcome everyone. So just going to kick off this presentation. I'm Kurt Nielsen. I'm one of the co-founders of the Partisia Blockchain Foundation. I'm here with Vincent Cassard, as you heard in a minute ago. What we are going to talk about is a humanitarian token system, which is close collaboration with the International Committee of International Red Cross. And I'll come back in a minute. Vincent will introduce the case, and I'll come back and tell you how we are using the technology to solve the requirements that the ICRC have for such a solution. So please, Vincent.
Thank you very much. So I'm representing the ICRC that I will present very briefly. We are an international organization, actually a very old one, nearly 160 years of work as an organization to support and assist people victims of conflict and other situations of violence. It's a private Swiss law organization, and we have as well a special status as an international organization, which means in country we work. Notably, on the data side, we are not following the domestic law, and we have our proper rules thanks to privileges and immunities as an organization. What is important is that the way we work is we have very strong principle of neutrality, so not taking part in a conflict in order to access the beneficiaries, impartiality, and independence. And obviously, in doing that, our main objective in assisting people in vulnerable situations is doing no harm, or even better, supporting them. So for us, these values are extremely important. We have a long experience of implementing them. The challenge is to implement these values and principles in a digital world, as we use more and more digital solutions. And what does it mean to be neutral using a digital tool? What does it mean being impartial using these tools is a bit one of the issue. Next. There's no next. So what we do, so there's a big array of activities. We will focus on one. Today we have a number of assistance programs that can be health related, water distribution, and what we call economic security. And one of the major programs that we're developing is cash. Basically, cash and voucher support has been really increasingly used. These figures are not just for ICRC, but in the humanitarian and development sectors, because it's been proven as being extremely positive, because it gives independence, it gives the capacity of control to individuals to control what they buy, what they purchase. It gives an influx in the economy. So it's basically a methodology that is used more and more. It's used with different tools. We have, we just distribute cash. In some places, we just go with little bags of cash. Sometimes a bit difficult in terms of security, but with the constraints we are working with, sometimes it's the only solution. Sometimes we distribute vouchers where they can go to merchants and buy things, or smart cards with cash on it. So now, why this solution and this partnership with Partisia? Because the usual system to distribute cash is basically you go through a bank system, and in addition to usually a phone company system, which means that going through these systems, you transfer the personal data of individuals whom you assist regularly. It's a heavy regulated environment. Both the banks and the phone companies are strictly regulated, have know your customer obligations, which means all these data goes to them and to central government and others. And for our use case, it's an issue because we're dealing with some vulnerable people, and part of them, not all of them, are not into the system. They are not into the system, and they don't want to be into the system because they could be targeted, they could be arrested, they could be in an area of the country where the conflict is taking place, so they're not part of the good side of the conflict. So we need a system where we do the same thing, we have the same flexibility, but without sharing the data, the personal data of individuals. Next slide. So that's basically the use case, and it's a complex one because the list of requirements is very specific. We want to have the trust of the financial service providers and the government without giving them the list of individuals. We want to control the list of individuals because we are the one who can control the requirements, who gets what type of aid. We want flexibility on the market so that there's a movement of value without a central control. And we want our own token system. We don't want to use an existing one because of the variation that we would be dependent on. All this is actually extremely complicated. In addition, we want a public blockchain because we want to have transparency. So we want the best of both worlds. We want transparency and privacy enhancing technologies. In addition to the constraints, maybe there's a practical one on the side, is that we are dealing with people that have limited access to phone and internet sometimes. All these constraints are very complex, in addition to the fact that I'm the DPO, so quite cautious in terms of use of blockchain when it comes to privacy. But we found a partner that accepted the challenge and is meeting the challenge.
Perfect. Thank you, Vincent. Yes, and now I will try to tell you how we solved the problem, how we met these requirements. So we call it the HES solution, the Humanitarian Token System. And what it really does, it's a bit like a USDC, where you have money inside of the International Red Cross, and that is then represented as tokens that is sent out in a token economy. But it's a kind of a closed-loop token system, because to meet all these requirements and to address the people in need. So what we have in the system is really a input. Input means that you register all the beneficiaries that is receiving the tokens. And you have output, which is how do you move out of these tokens and into the fiat that is backing the tokens. So let's have a look at the system. So we have two types of users in order to also to meet the requirements. We have the phone users, and we have people without phone. People without phone, they just get a QR code. And the QR code is not like a gift card, it's actually an account, like the account that you have on your phone. So you really allow the functionalities for both people with and without phones. And then it's really about establishing this token economy and its input and its output. So on the input side, you have the beneficiaries, the two types, and you have anyone else that is downloading the application and starting to receive or spend the tokens. On the other side of the equation, you have the output, the possibility of redeeming back into fiat. So that is designated merchants like a supermarket that can have these functionalities and can get the tokens out in fiat. Or it's really anyone else. The system does not limit us to not include anyone else that is going through the traditional banking system and then include them as redeemer. Clearly, the functionality of redeeming token is what is going to create trust around the value of the token. So it's a super important functionality of the system. So now I'm going to talk a bit about the privacy part, because that was one of the strong requirements, since the ICRC, as I understand it, has also been looking at traditional blockchains before we was introduced to the problem. And one of the problem was the anonymity and the privacy. So this is an example of a traditional blockchain. So anonymized blockchain. So you have these pseudonyms, you have your accounts, and everything is transparent in the blockchains. And you have full transparency if you can follow all the transactions. You even have companies that is making a business out of mapping all of the transactions in a pseudonymized blockchain like Chainalysis as an example. So the problem here is that you can have you can look at the ledger, you can be out there in the field, you can connect the person that is buying things in a supermarket with a transaction on the ledger and break the identity. So that was the issue that we needed to solve. And the thing is that the Partisia blockchain is new in the sense that it's a two-layer blockchain. It adds privacy to blockchain. And in this sense, privacy means that you can compute any computations privately. So using something called zero-knowledge computation, different types of zero-knowledge computation like MPC and fully homomorphic encryptions to run the computation to make sure that the computation that is done private stay private. On the other side of this, you have a traditional blockchain with the traditional features that create transparency and function as a transparent organizer of the otherwise private layer in the blockchain. So these two things, these two sort of basic tools is solving the problem. So the first version of the solution is basically to use what we call the private smart contracts. That's the part of the network that is where everything is done privately. So now you have to imagine that whatever you had on the traditional blockchain is now completely encrypted, and all the transactions that is done here is done encrypted. So all the deposits done from the ICRC to the beneficiaries is kept private. All the withdrawing, all the spending is done in the private contract and kept encrypted at all time. This is solving for privacy, complete privacy. So there's the problem about pattern recognition, that you could be able to trace people and be out there in the field and connect things, is simply removed. One of the challenges here is that this might be too much privacy, and there's also some issues in getting this to a scalable level. So the discussions ended with this minimum viable product, which has been implemented and now ready for field test. I'll get back to this. But what the solution is, that here is a mix of the private and the public. So every deposit that is made by the ICRC happens within the private layer. So that's all encrypted. And then the users, they come in and they withdraw their money as a beneficiary into the public network. Whenever they do that, they get a new address. So the pattern recognition that is now happening in the pseudonymized blockchain to the right here, the blue one, is limited to the withdrawing amount of the transactions that is done with the withdrawn numbers. So, and then the beneficiaries go back, they withdraw some more, and they spend the money in the pseudonymized contract. This adds an extra layer of transparency. So now you actually have complete privacy about the deposit. You have a limited ability to trace anything, but you also have a record with all of the transactions, all of the spending of the humanitarian tokens. So it becomes transparent how these funds is spent in the token economy without breaking the privacy. So that's the solution that we have implemented. And this is showing how you sort of withdraw and you're spending the money in the public part of the network. I don't want to go too much into the infrastructure, but anyway, just the 2 words. I mean, it's really to emphasize the 2 sides of the network. So we have here. On the right, we have the mobile phone, the apps, we'll see that in a minute. We have the ICRC with that system, how they distribute and assign beneficiaries into the system. And then we have the network, the 2 layers of the network that is doing the magic on how to balance between transparency and privacy. So it's the otherwise traditional blockchain, the public network, to the right, and the private network to the left here. And the way they work with this is through smart contract. There's a consolidated, complete smart contract language that allow you to just say, okay, this data is private. These computations have to be kept private. These are public. So you as when you work with this, you design what is open and what is private in the network. So you can probably imagine a lot of other applications of this. But let's have a closer look at what is actually implemented. So as mentioned, this is a solution that is ready for field test. And at 2 o'clock at the Partisia Blockchain booth, you can come and you can test out the solution. I will just use some slides here, but you can come and see that this is not just slideware, but there is an actual solution behind this. So let me just go through some of the key functions of the solution. So we have the beneficiaries, so we need to distribute the tokens to the beneficiaries. They download the application, and now they need to be linked as a beneficiary. They put in a little bit, we ask them to put in a little bit of information. So this is Peter Parker from New York, clearly one of the big crisis zones in the world. But that's an pseudonymized example here. The information is now sent to the ICRC, and the ICRC or the system is implementing some of the internal control system in the ICRC, which in this case is 2-level. So you have the delegation, which is the main country office, and you have the sub-delegation, which is in contact with the beneficiaries. So it's the people with contact with the beneficiaries, the sub-delegation that is connecting people to the network. So they go in here and either they have them in front of them and they scan the QR code in the app, or they get the information and link them directly. So in this case, we go in and link them remote. And then that beneficiary is in the system. It's ready to receive. The person is ready to receive funds. And the sub-delegation is now requesting a money transfer to the beneficiary. And that is approved. Oh, this is 100 tokens transferred to the beneficiaries. And now we have that the delegation is approving the transfer. With that in place, the token is out in the token economy. It's in the app of the users. And from here, it's really, really very simple. 2 buttons, either you're spending or you're earning tokens. So in this case, we are spending tokens. So that could be, I now have tokens. I go into that supermarket that is designated merchants in the system. I buy some groceries. I pay with these tokens. So what I do is that I open, push, spend. I scan the QR codes, the seller's QR code in the supermarket, and I type in the numbers. So in this case, I have spent for 40 tokens, groceries, and I slide and spend the money. And that's basically it. The balance is updated, and you can go and you can either earn or spend the money. So if you take a little step back and look at this system again from the outside, it's really about trust creation in a number of ways. So we have the ICRC. They are backing the system. They are creating the tokens. They are assigning beneficiaries. They are approving redeemers. So it's a closed loop system in that sense. And then you have the token economy where people can, in a very simple way, transfer or receive tokens. So the very first and the basic trust step is the example from before, where you just go in, you basically use the blockchain to transfer money. So you get the tokens, you go to the supermarkets and you pay, a bit like a gift card. But the system is a lot more than a gift card. It's a complete token economy. But in the beginning, people, of course, they need to see, can I get money out of this system? And that's what happens if you can actually go and buy with these tokens again in the same supermarket. I'm pretty sure that that's because that the supermarket was able to redeem the tokens for fiat. So in that way, you're creating trust around the token. And then with that trust, you can go to the next step and you establish a token economy. And this is where the big saving is introduced. where you have like a closed loop token economy and not just a transfer one-to-one of cash. The other part, the privacy part, is just a requirement. I mean, this is never going to be, I'm pretty sure Vincent will agree on this, that this is not going to be used in practice on this unless this is solved. The reasons are quite obvious. If you break the identity, it's pretty hard to undo this. And we are talking about crisis zones or war zones, potentially, that with vulnerable people receiving funds. So this is really a critical issue, and it's all about the long-run reputation of the system. So this is where we are today. We have this system. We are ready to take the next step and go out in the field, test this, see how it works, get some feedback, adjust, and move towards real-life use. So this timeline it's actually started a long time before September, scoping out the whole project, agreeing on what to do. But the actual product development was starting in September last year and was delivered actually Tuesday at a meeting in Geneva. So we are now here where we are focusing on how do we bring the system to real life use? How do we move from, or test how we can move from distributing physical cash to having a token economy like this for humanitarian token systems. So I see that we have quite some extra time. So there will be time for some more questions about this. And 2 o'clock, there will be a demo presentation at the Partisia Blockchain booth. I just want to mention that this sort of fits into how we are working with the NGO world and using the SDG Gold in order to showcase what you can use with this new type of blockchain that has privacy built in. So we have a number of use cases that showcase this and that stress test us as a team that built the mainnet, that we are actually solving real problems. So just to give a few more examples of this. Last year we worked on a new way to do fundraising for the NGO. We helped the organization called RED and Global Fund in order to raise funds for COVID initiatives. And we managed to raise approximately half a million US through a token sale or NFT sale. The whole idea here is that you are starting out with a piece of art. It could actually be a piece of art from a local artist in the area where you're trying to solve problems, and then that piece of art is actually sort of slowly turning into a fundraising story. So it becomes a richer and richer story about the assistance that the revenue from selling and reselling this piece of NFT has generated, that is captured in the NFT. So that has been sort of tested and as a new model for fundraising and creating transparency around the spending of the funding. Another example that we have been working on is, and in different forms, is actually a tailored use of the ICRC solution. So in this case, you use the token for a locked purpose. The locked purpose is to buy treatment. It could be treatment for TB, HIV, whatever is whatever is relevant for the donors. Now the trick here is that now we actually have the person that is buying the medicine, and we have the medicine. We scan it, and that allows us to do forensics on that piece of medicine, which is a huge issue in developing countries. You have up to 70% of counterfeit medicine in developing countries, and the problem is to capture this individual piece of medicine, use information from the supply chain to do the forensics. With the privacy layer, we can include more information. We can improve the forensics that is done in the field when you buy the individual medicine. You could use this for many other things, but this is one example of tailored use of the token. The last example is work for the Cyber Peace Institute, which is working with NGOs, helping NGOs combat cyber attacks. And here we are using the network to make the NGOs aware of any incoming cyber attacks and do that immediately. So the private layer is used to confidentially and immediately share incidences of compromises that is happening with the NGOs. And they can do that now without exposing themselves as a vulnerable organization in the situation where they are just being hacked, and without compromising the brand, which is a critical issue. And everyone in this network of NGOs is now aware of what is now happening in terms of cyber attacks and can prepare for what is coming. So another example of how you can make, let's put it, or you can make the good guys collaborate, maybe like the bad guys is collaborating in networks. So you facilitate confidential collaboration between the good guys in order to combat attacks from bad actors in the systems, in the economy in general. With that, I will conclude, and if you have some questions, please let us know.
I have a question. Is your solution, which I love the presentation, by the way, so thank you very much. Seems like it was well thought out for the end user in terms of the ease of the platform. So it's particularly meant for NGOs. Is it something that's available to any consumer or any partner that wants to use the solution?
So Partisia Blockchain is like any blockchain. It's an open source project, and these solutions are open source projects. So and the solution, the problem that we solve is very generic. So you can go in if you have a use case, and you can go in and modify the solution and make it fit to any other use case. And we are already working with some. Cannot disclose exactly who that is, but I think these tailored use cases where you actually go in and use some extra functionalities of these programmable money to address the aid to the right people. Yeah.
Do you think a solution like yours will be rolled out and scaled more widely to help with like hacks when digital currency becomes more of the norm?
I hope so. I hope so. So the latter with the cyber breach, yes, absolutely. I mean, this is a very, very general problem, and there's a lot of system. Most system is operating within perimeters. You're trying to address problems. You analyze problems within your perimeters. You get intelligence from the outside. So what can improve the existing system is really to get more intelligence to the individual organization. And by collaborating, that is exactly what you achieve. Yes.
Hello, Alex, my name. I'm an entrepreneur myself, and I have been thinking about similar things many of times.
Fantastic.
Because I have been working in fundraising for the Red Cross and the Order of Malta actually quite a lot. I think 10 years or so I did that. And one concern I have about the transparency this brings is that I think many NGOs are not happy with total transparency actually, because they have doubt that the people like everything that is done with money, right? I haven't seen the very beginning of your presentation, so yeah, but what do you think about this, that the NGOs might not want to be total transparent in everything?
Not my experience, but I will leave that for Vincent.
Maybe briefly, this answers a kind of niche issue that we realize. That I understand the question of expansion. For us, here what is important is to reach the extra mile. Usually the people the most vulnerable that can't get in the system. They are not in the banking system. They are not in the system. So for us, it's a way to get their trust. At the same time, the trust of the government and authorities, because there's a full transparency on all the exchange of value. I mean, all the steps are documented. You don't have the identity, but you have all the transfers. Right. So for us, it's exactly what we need to get this trust and a strong level of transparency. Then in terms of what is done with the money, it's the same question as if you distribute a voucher, because by definition, anyway, they're going to use it with certain merchants that have been pre-selected. So it doesn't add any uncertainty to the existing system. It just adds security and this privacy.
So quite the opposite, actually. And I would just say that this has also been my experience when I've been talking to the different NGOs around in Geneva, where we have been having a lot of meetings. But maybe sometimes it's hard to find that solution that is actually creating that transparency and still having all the internal control system and accountability in place at the same time.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. That was a really enlightening presentation and how to help with such a niche problem and the solution that was being presented.